We are Cactus Wrestling. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos.
Cactus Wrestling is now available on Spotify and Amazon. And don't forget to check us out on Etsy for all of your Cactus Wrestling apparel needs. All right, welcome back to Cactus Wrestling. Today we have a very, very special episode because we have the founder of Claw Wrestling, Mr. Tom Houck, joining us. Tom, how you doing? Welcome to the channel.
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, so we,
Pleasure.
we are super excited about the future of Claw Wrestling. Tell us, why should people know Claw Wrestling, what it is, give your pitch, let the people know all about Claw.
Well, I think myself and you guys and a lot of other wrestling fans, I'm sure, have always wondered why there's not a professional league for real wrestling.
Definitely.
There's professional leagues for just about everything these days. Professional tag, cornhole,
Yeah.
everything under the sun except real wrestling. And so that's always, been in the back of my mind, being involved with wrestling. So we really wanted to make it happen. And it's been a lot of research to find out why past attempts have failed, and a lot of research on other leagues. There's so much innovation going on in the sports world now. When I started researching, I started with fan psychology and nothing to do with wrestling. What makes a good spectator sport? What do fans want to see? What do they don't like? And then that led into researching various leagues and other sports, starting with the big obvious ones that are successful. But that led in, there's just dozens of these innovative experiments going on in different sports. 3 ice in hockey, 3-on-3 hockey, like it's overtime. Athletes Unlimited is a professional league for women in different sports, softball and volleyball. There's new golf leagues coming out that are fast. And the big theme in a lot of them, of course, is faster pace, more interesting to watch, social media friendly. And so even the big sports, of course, are trying to speed up things and get more action and scoring. So I think wrestling really needs something like that. A lot of people in wrestling are kind of content with the status quo. And, it can be such a great sport to watch. Sometimes it's not, it's boring. And that's what we really tried to set out to do, is let's try to minimize the boring stuff, emphasize action and scoring and fan engagement and fan strategy. It's got to be real wrestling. We didn't want to create a new sport that guys had to learn, or women. And then do the things that professional leagues do that wrestling's never operated like a for-profit concern. Like my career is in business, and my co-founder's career is in business. And we felt it was really important to view this as a business, to run it in a quality way like a business, and to find out, like businesses do, what customers want and deliver that to them. And sort of to get outside the wrestling bubble. I think a lot of people in wrestling, they think wrestling's the greatest sport and you should watch it. And we all love wrestling, but if you talk to people out there who don't watch wrestling, they don't necessarily agree. They think it's boring. They think singlets are weird. They think guys laying on top of each other is weird, and they think it's slow at times. And it is. In neutral, you have staring contests sometimes, or just locking up in a collar tie. Mat wrestling can be boring if a guy's just riding with no intent to turn. So for all those reasons, we're trying to come up with a faster pace, more exciting, fan-friendly. Everything's about the fans, to try to make it a more fan-friendly sport. And then that will allow wrestling to grow and get more viewers, get more eyeballs, get more sponsorship money coming in. But it all starts with an exciting core product, and then running it like a professional business, that's trying to attract and retain fans.
It's funny because most people who wrestled in the past, I talked to a lot of people who wrestled in high school, and a lot of them, they don't go on to wrestle in college. And those who don't follow the college scene, they don't keep up with any sort of wrestling whatsoever. So for people that were trying to like bring back into the sport, how would you describe claw to them for your average, oh, I used to wrestle in high school. Oh, I hear there's a professional league. Tell me about that, because I know there are some rule changes to the traditional high school and college rules, and you mentioned the high pace. So tell us about some of the exciting changes that you guys are working on.
Well, and first to your point about those people, we've done a lot of market analysis and market research, and it's funny. There's kind of two target groups of people who don't watch wrestling, who should watch wrestling because they've done it or they're familiar with it. First is the almost million boys and girls in the United States that wrestle now and don't watch it. I mean, and you can tell by the numbers. Iowa State wrestled Iowa this year, and it was a sort of a big featured, the big dual meet of the season, and it got I think it was 240,000, plus or minus viewers on I think it was ESPN. Penn State wrestled Iowa last year. That was the big dual meet. They got 388,000 on the Big Ten network. And NCAAs, generally the finals get somewhere around 500,000. Well, there's 1 million kids who wrestle in the United States.
Right.
And we know a lot of those viewers are like older wrestling people, guys that used to wrestle. If you look at the demographics of the viewership. So most of the kids aren't watching it. That means most of their families aren't watching it. So right there, if you include their families, if a father or mother watch with their son or daughter, that's 2 people or 3 people. So there's several million people there who could be watching wrestling. They're doing it. And then this is the really big number and exciting number. If you add up all the former wrestlers in the United States and whatever that number comes to, it's 10. I'm just estimating right now, but say it's 10 million people. Well, they wrestled, but their parents know what wrestling is. Their siblings know what wrestling is. Like they know it's not WWE.
Oh, yeah. The moms,
when
they
I
get
go
the t-shirts.
I go to schools all the time to promote wrestling, like the middle schools and elementary schools. And the vast majority of kids think it's WWE when you go in.
Yeah.
But this bigger group, they know what real wrestling is and they respect it usually. They know that wrestlers are hard workers and it requires discipline and sacrifice. So they respect the sport, but they don't watch it. And the question is, and we estimate there's 40 to 50 million people in that group. Wow. So they don't watch it. So why? Well, some people think it's boring. It's hard to know when it's on. There's not like a consistent schedule. Sunday afternoons is NFL time, sort of thing. There's no betting to speak of, really. There's no fantasy leagues to speak of that people do in other sports. Matches don't have consequences. If a guy wants to sit first of all, the dual meets you can argue don't matter at all anyway. It's all about March. And, so guys sit out if they don't feel like wrestling or they want to avoid somebody.
That always gets under my skin.
So many problems that cause people not to get engaged, with the sport. And so we're trying to address those sort of things. We've looked at other professional sports that are successful and we're like, we want to do everything they're doing. And wrestling, and that's the beauty is there's so much low-hanging fruit with wrestling. We could do these basic, obvious things, and that's going to bring in more viewers. But then we have other ideas too to make it more innovative and fan-friendly. I don't know if you guys have heard of Banana Ball, but it's kind of taken the baseball world by storm.
Savannah Bananas, right?
Yeah, the Savannah Banana. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's some people might say it's not a serious sport if you've seen it, and I agree with that. It's more Harlem Globetrotters, than real baseball. But what they do forget about the rules and the playing of the game and the dancing and stuff that they do. What they do to engage fans off the field, is awesome because they're all about the fans. They're all about entertaining people and getting them to have a great experience and to come back. And that's what we want to do for wrestling too. I mean, too many times you go to I was at the All-Star Classic in the fall up at Rec Hall, and you didn't even know who the wrestlers were. There's no program. They ran out and the PA announcer said their name, and if you could hear it, through the noise and the PA system, you could get a name. but just like nothing for the fans. You better love wrestling, and you better love, just being there. If you're new, forget it. So our goal is whether you're new or you're a seasoned veteran as a wrestling fan, is to make sure you have a great experience, make sure you have a great time. We feel like that's pretty easy to do in person. It's a little harder to do on the screen, to get people to stop on a broadcast and watch something and entertain them. So that's one of the challenges, is how do we engage new people on the screen, so that they'll want to watch and keep watching, because you got to get them hooked pretty quickly.
Yeah. And for certain areas of the country, obviously Pennsylvania is huge for wrestling. Is that an area that you're targeting, Claw, or how do you kind of go about to make it? Is it more regionalized at this point, or what's like the 5-year goal? Like, where are we today, and then how do we get there throughout the years? Are you starting at a regionalized, because you guys had that event in Virginia, right, a few months ago, right, like a month ago or so, and then
Right.
where do we go from there?
So our first goal is, the schedule is to launch the league next year. So 2025 fall will be the first season. And we really have to make sure that it's a sustainable product, that, it's not a one and done thing, like so many.
How long is the season?
The season's short. It will depend on exactly. Right now we're planning 6 teams. And so the season takes place really over, a 4 or 5 week period. So starting in mid to late October and wrapping up by Thanksgiving. So it's a relatively short season, but it's got to be long enough so that word spreads and people hear, and maybe they'll watch the next one or come to the next one. Our original goal was to go on tour, which a lot of these other sport leagues do, instead of having teams in home cities, because we don't know what towns will support a wrestling franchise. Even like Final X was, so I grew up in Pennsylvania and State College, and was a Penn Stater, wrestled briefly for Penn State, but I still had our house up there until recently. So we'd go up, to meets all the time and stuff. So we were up at Final X when it was at Rec Hall a few years ago, and I think it was David Taylor's return to his first time back since college. And even then, they only got, 3,000 or 4,000 people for the Final X event. And
we've gone to Final X, and it's similar. Like the crowd is not, it's not like sold out, and it's always like, I would have been certain this would have sold out.
Yeah. You would think with the quality of talent there and the big names that it would. So, it's like, and where do you do it? They did it in Newark last year. It was been at Rec Hall. It's been in Lincoln. And, even when they try to get the hometown guy there, the college fans don't necessarily from that school come out to support it. So we're like, we don't want to say we're going to do it in, Iowa or State College or wherever, Raleigh, because we don't know if those college fans will come out and support this, especially if their guys aren't on the teams. And so we decided to do tour basis. Sorry, this is a long rambling answer, but we decided to go on tour and just pick wrestling hotbeds and then see if those communities will support it, and communities where we can find grassroots support to help spread the word. The reason we did this first one in Northern Virginia is because I've run a wrestling facility here for like 10 years and know tons of the high school coaches and the youth coaches, and just have a good grassroots effort. But in some of these other great wrestling places, we don't really know anybody yet. So we got to find people, local community people who want the league to come there, will help spread the word, who will help get teams and clubs to show up. And so sort of the natural places, and without too much travel, probably for the athletes initially. A lot of the athletes are sort of, in this Eastern Midwest area. So we were looking at Pittsburgh, Southeast Pennsylvania, Philly, Lancaster, in that region somewhere. Northern Virginia, because of our connections here. And then, Cleveland is on the list, Raleigh's on the list. somewhere in the Midwest, but then you get into a lot of the guys are traveling. So that's the plan as of now, and we might do some matches in a studio to start. There's a big debate. How much do we want to do in a studio where it's a controlled environment? You can have cool graphics in the background and control everything and not deal with the live experience versus doing everything live and spending all that time and money and effort trying to get people in the seats. So we're still deciding exactly how many.
So
because
right
it is hard. It's hard.
So right now the decision is to either like, all right, here's a wrestling match in a studio, we're gonna film it and then work on access. How do we get this out to the masses? Versus, okay, let's pack a gym and make this an in-person type of thing. That's kind of the debate going on right now.
Yeah, and I believe we can, if we have some bigger names and we market effectively, that we can do a good job filling seats. Some other people in the team are very skeptical. Like for this event in June, we got about 500 people, but it was June. It's vacation season. I know we lost a lot of people to vacations and weddings, and it's not wrestling season.
It's not.
And there's so many people at the youth level. Once wrestling season's done, they check out and they're on to their next sports or whatever. We really want families and kids to come. We want it to be a kid-friendly thing. So how much would we have gotten if that was in wrestling season? I think several thousand people for that with minimal marketing. And that's another area. Wrestling has never really marketed, the sport, trying to get butts in seats. And so we're looking at all the traditional ways of marketing, but also, more, tech savvy ways like geofencing and, retargeting ads. And I mean, the geofencing, which I didn't even know existed until like 6 months ago, is fascinating, that we can put a digital fence around an area and then send targeted ads to their iPhones. So that could be the New Jersey State Championships. It could be Fargo. It could be a big MMA event if we're trying to attract MMA fans. And I don't think anybody's ever done anything like this in wrestling. So it's one of the ways that we hope, to grow audience and fill seats. But we're having that debate about how much is in the studio and how much is live this first year. Back to your original question, like 5 years out, we hope, a lot of people don't know about it yet. Appreciate you guys helping to spread the word. When we did our event, I'd say most Big Ten wrestlers, for example, don't even know the claw exists yet, because we haven't launched. We're still sort of in the, proof of concept and testing stages. But once the word gets out, and it takes some time to get that going, hopefully in the next couple years, we'll be adding more and more tour dates to the schedule. And 5 years out, you've got more teams, maybe 8 to 12 teams. And maybe even by then, some locations where, they really want to support this, they want to franchise, in their town. So we're not there yet, but that's sort of the goal for the next few years.
And I got to say, you're talking about getting high profile names. I personally am impressed with the list of athletes that you do have. And if you're saying that Big Ten guys don't even know, like, I feel like followers of this channel, Cactus Wrestling, are pretty hardcore fans. So for those of you who don't know Claw Wrestling, some of these names: Ty Gadiali, Zach Elam, Chip Ness. These are all Americans from seasons past. Clay Lout. I'm just scrolling here. Ian Parker, Dan Lewis. Dan Lewis was like 4-time All-American from Missouri.
4-time.
Yeah. Alan Hart from Missouri. I mean, these are some big names. Jet Strickenberger, he's the current guy for West Virginia. So I think, like, if this is where we're at today, I mean, it's only uphill from here.
Yeah.
And notice that list. We were thrilled to have all those guys. They're great wrestlers, but not one Big Ten wrestler on those names you just listed.
Yeah, interesting.
In fact, out of all the guys that competed in the tournament, there was only one former Big Ten wrestler, Kyle Cochran from Maryland. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, as we were marketing that event, we had a lot of those guys signed up like near the deadline, or we even extended the deadline a little bit because they hadn't heard about it. So it just takes time to get the word out. This fall, we're trying to get around to more schools, more Big Ten schools, do exhibition matches in their room. We've done that at several places, and just get people, because there's two things. One is they don't know who we are, and here comes if they do hear about it, they don't know who we are. Here comes another league, another attempt at professional wrestling. Ho hum. They don't know that we're putting more money and effort and research into this than anybody's ever done. They don't know that yet. And then they hear about pylons and they're like, what the heck is this? And sounds goofy and silly. And so that was kind of, until they see it. And that's what we found with a lot of people. They're skeptical at first. And then once they see it a few times, you're like, yeah, this does make it more interesting and fun to watch. So hopefully, the next year we're going to spend a lot of time trying to get athletes for the draft. But it was very encouraging, the guys that we got. Yeah, a lot of good wrestlers.
So how did you get Billy Baldwin?
Billy is an old. So the co-founder Eric Brugel, who was an All-American at Penn State, we grew up together. He's longtime friends, I guess, forever with Billy, and Billy's been a big supporter and enthusiast of wrestling. And Eric asked him if he wanted to be a GM for this, and he said yes right away to help out. So yeah, we were glad that he was willing to do that.
Yeah, but we're also Binghamton alumni like Billy, so
yeah, we've met Billy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we're Binghamton boys, and we love Billy. So he's always a great advocate for the sport.
Nice.
And
is he gonna have?
Go ahead, Mike.
I was gonna say, is he gonna have continued? Like, he's gonna continue to be a GM?
I think so. I've never actually met Billy or talked to him, but yeah, I think that's the plan. Each team will have a general manager. The big thing for our GMs is, that they're passionate about it, that they'll help spread the word and use their influence. We wanted to get some people outside of, wrestling, and, social media influencers, who would, think it was cool to not own a team, but manage a team. Yeah. And, even if they don't know much about wrestling, they could get a wrestling person to help them with the draft and stuff. But that's the idea. They'll repost things, they'll spread the word, and another way to grow the audience.
So you touched on the draft a little bit. Is there any wrestlers that you're kind of like really trying to target, or how do you guys, go about your draft? Like, could you get a younger athlete? I know Bo Bassett, for example, super popular. Everyone knows about this kid. Is he on the younger side for Claw? Or are you guys more reaching towards like college age wrestlers? More, what's your draft look like?
Well, because the season is in late October, going up through Thanksgiving, we're not sure if we can get current college guys, red shirt guys, probably. But we would love somebody like Bo, who's maybe even pre-college. If they just have to get drafted, which he most likely would. But we probably envision, because of the timing, that it's more senior level guys. Okay. And either currently coaching. That's if they're a coach at a school, are they going to have a conflict, with their university, if we have events. But there's still a lot of the guys that Jack just mentioned, they all wrestled in the past year or two, and they're still training and working out, and sometimes with the club, sometimes they're a high school coach. So I think there's a lot of guys like that. And then of course there's the guys actively competing and training all the time. In terms of specific names though, originally we're like, we need big names, that will draw an audience with the wrestling crowd at least. But we have found, like, the guys at the top of the ladder, they've had these other goals and priorities their whole life, and now, like, making world teams and making the Olympic team, and their schedules set out. It's funny because everybody's like, don't talk back in the fall and the winter. Don't talk to us until after the trials. We're focused on the trials. And then as soon as the trials came, we started contacting these guys, and they're like, "Oh, our schedule's already set for the summer, so we can't come." And we're like, "Thanks a lot." But I know, like when Kyle Snyder was at our wrestling facility, he's like, "I've got every day scheduled out basically a year in advance, roughly. And, so we got to get the word out that this league is happening, and this is when it is happening, that some of those guys can plan accordingly. But if the number one, we never have thought like, the number one guys on the ladder would probably want to do it, especially if they haven't wrestled folk style in a while. Once they've done freestyle for a number of years, like they really don't want to be on bottom again, and doing mat wrestling. And so but we were hoping like, the 2, 3, 4, some of those guys would do it. So we'd love, like, he's a number one now, but guys that score a lot of points and they're fun to watch. Jason Nolf, Spencer Lee, Zane, for people to get to see Zane on top again, would just be a treat for wrestling fans. I mean, that's the one thing I hate about freestyle. These guys that were so good on top.
Yeah.
Logan Stever, Spencer Lee. I mean, we're not going to see that anymore. Zane, no. But so we'd love to have Mitchell guys that are aggressive and score a lot of points. Mitchell Messenbrink, we hope, to talk to at some point here. But as long as guys are hungry, like the guys that came to our June 23rd event, they wanted to wrestle. They had a chance to make some money. And they were great. They were enthusiastic and scrapping. And, there wasn't a lot of stalling because guys, they knew what this was all about, and that they came to wrestle. So even if it's not big names, I think having some big names is good. But even if it's not, if we market it properly, if we tell human interest stories properly, if we can build rivalries, do the things that professional leagues do well, that wrestling hasn't spent a lot of time on, I think we'll be okay. It will just take a little bit of time.
Awesome.
And non-wrestling fans, of course, don't care anything about those names because
that's the thing.
Yeah, that's very true.
So what's the incentive? So if you're trying to recruit, if I'm a guy, I just graduated college and I'm maybe not the top, I mean, it's so competitive. I'm not the Olympic qualifier for Team USA or whatever it is. Why should I join Claw Wrestling? I mean, it's a paid professional wrestling league, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to wrestle and compete and make money, and the money's nice to start off the plans, but hopefully as it grows and the league is successful, it's going to be more and more. So initially, of course, it's supplemental income. They're not going to make a full living off of it, but they can make some nice money for a weekend. Just a couple of events. Our original budget had like the top guys making 40,000-50,000 a year for like 3 or 4 events. And
hey, I'll take
we
3
might
events.
scale that back a little.
Right?
We might scale that back.
Yeah.
because those top guys said, we want to do that. We're traded for the Olympics. We got other plans.
Yeah.
So we might scale that back and have like signing bonuses for top guys or something like that. But still, if you can come in and make, wrestle and compete and be on a team and build your social media brand, and have it just be treated like a professional athlete, because we want to treat the athletes really well. And you can make, 5 or 10 grand a weekend, or one day, whatever it ends up being, that's nice change.
That's pretty nice.
Pretty good day.
Where else are they going to make that kind of money wrestling? So
Nowhere.
it's about money, but it's also about, guys, these guys wanted to wrestle. Like they don't want to be done.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that there's a lot of guys like that.
I think there definitely are.
For sure. Yeah.
And so let's talk about some of the rule changes, because I know we were talking about pylons before. For those of you who don't know anything about Claw, probably like, what the heck is what the pylon? So what are some of the big rule changes for, and let's break it down to the basic, I used to wrestle in high school type wrestler who's just trying to get into it. Obviously there's rule changes in college every year, it seems like, as well, but what is specifically unique to Claw wrestling?
Well, we'll start with the pylons. It's really the only thing that's different from, a regular wrestling match. And if you watch like highlights or any of our matches, it looks and it is real wrestling. We've just added incentives to encourage action and scoring. and new ways to score, and disincentives, to stall. And so we treat stalling differently, and we can talk about that. But the pylons, they're the orange pylons. I have some here somewhere, but the orange pylons, like in a football field, like in the corner of the end zones. And basically, if the bottom person can knock it down, he gets a point. And if the top person can knock it down before they do it, they take away that point, sort of a preemptive strike. It's only for mat wrestling. And what we found is it makes mat wrestling a lot more interesting because anytime you're riding somebody and there's a pylon nearby, all of a sudden it becomes more interesting because there's a point in play. So a lot of people, some critics are like, that's goofy, that's stupid, introducing props to wrestling. What is this? And my response would be, it's actually more wrestling. It's because you really have to control the guy on top now. They say folk style is about control. Are you controlling the guy if he can go wherever he wants? Like if you ever watch some movie where there's like a gun on the floor and they're scrambling to get it, if you can't control the guy, he's going to get it. So so it takes control to a new level, and it takes mat awareness to a new level because you always got to know where those pylons are. And you can see when these guys wrestle, some of them are very aware of that right away, and some of them seem oblivious, to the pylons. They're not aware of where they are on the mat. And the guy who is, knocks it down and gets the point or takes away the opportunity. Sometimes they're like really close to a pylon, and the guy could kick it, and nobody does anything because they forget where they are on the mat. It's funny that history on that real quick is when we did our research, a wrestling interviewee said it would be nice if there was different ways for the bottom person to score besides just an escape or reversal. And so there was that discussion going on, and we're like, yeah, but like how? If they don't get broken down, they get a point or something. Like we couldn't come up with anything. Then there's these other discussions going on about push-outs from neutral. And, that led to, we question everything in the rules. We rethink everything. And we're like, well, if there's push-outs for neutral, why isn't there push-outs when you're on the mat? Why isn't there something similar? And that led to, okay, what about push-outs for the top person? What if they can get him off the mat? And then we're like, well, you can kind of maybe just pick up a guy and carry him off, or drag him off. And, we weren't crazy about that. And then we're like, well, what if the bottom person can get out of bounds and the top person has to keep them in? Oh, well, by the way, that solves that other problem too. Gives the bottom person a way to score. And then that kind of led to, well, if you get out of bounds and you hit the out of bounds, you could get a point. Well, you have the whole mat to work with, and it's kind of it's fairly easy to do with so much space. And then one day I was watching an NFL game, and, the running back, goes around the end and dives and hits the pylon. And I'm like, that's it. Pylons.
That aha moment.
We tried it. People loved it right off the bat.
Eureka.
And at first it's sort of novel and gimmicky and everybody's yelling about the pylons. There's this obsession with pylons with new people doing it. Get the pylon because it's new and different.
Yeah.
But I've now seen over 100 matches, with D1 and post-collegiate wrestlers, and it's just wrestling. It's just part of the match. There's nothing goofy or funny about it. It's like, then some people will say, well, it's not fair that the bottom person knocked over 3 pylons and the other person got a takedown, and the guy with the takedown lost. And it's like, well, maybe he shouldn't have let the guy go over and knock down 3 pylons. Control him. So anyway, we're still working with the rules on pylons. We started with 4. We did 3 at this last event. We're talking about maybe 2. If it's 3, we might move them a little further apart. Another big rule change that makes mat wrestling more interesting is the quick score bonus. So we've had, if you score in the first 15 seconds, you get an extra point, whatever it is. Your takedown becomes from 2 to 3, and escape becomes worth 2. And it really, instead of the typical bracing on the whistle by the bottom guy, there's this urgency, to get out. We're after this last round of matches, we might make it 10 seconds instead of 15 seconds because the bottom person was knocking down the pylon a lot and getting escapes, and it's a little, the bottom person seemed to have a little bit of an edge. So the quick score bonus is a new rule innovation.
I think that
We
was your
call
guys' feedback, right? In our last video when we were
Yeah,
watching
yeah, one thing that I was talking about was like I feel like the bottom guy, the quick score bonus is like almost overpowered because
Yeah.
like if you got a takedown in 15 seconds, that's a much harder thing to do than get an escape or a pylon in 15 seconds. So yeah, that was one comment I had. Yeah.
Yeah, it's especially with a lot of bottom, and we still have training to do with the refs. Like if you watch any matches, sometimes they were
Yeah.
given, a guy would cut a guy as he got to the pylon, and they'd give him a pylon point and an escape and a quick score bonus. All of a sudden, the bottom person got 3 points, in the first 15 seconds, and it seemed like you shouldn't be able to get 3 points. If the guy's cutting you, it's going to be two. Uh, Another big thing that's really encouraged action is you have to win the round. You got to win the most number of rounds to win the match. So you can't get a lead and coast. You can't wait to try to keep it close and wait at the end. Each round is like a mini bout, and so that really encourages. So on the first part of the round, and the rounds are shorter. It's only a minute or a minute and a half, depending on the round. In the first 10 or 15 seconds, you got the quick score urgency. And then at the end of the round, it's like, I got to win this round. So, I can't be content, just to sit here on bottom or whatever, or not to shoot. So there's just those, so it's all still real wrestling, normal wrestling, but they're just these incentives, to act. And then there's stalling, which is just called a lot more quicker. If you're not doing anything, you get warned, and you have a very sort of like putting on a shot clock, and then you get a short amount of time to respond. And if you respond and you're aggressive and you act, they'll take away the warning, and that can happen multiple times during a match. But if you
We
don't
noticed
respond,
stalemates were getting called really quickly too.
stalemates too. And so some officials did things differently than others. Uh, like on one match, stalling on top was called really quick, and in another match, like might have been the next match, but a different ref, what the top guy wasn't doing much at all, and it wasn't called at all. And so we really learned we have to spend more time with officials. It was their first time too, so not their fault. It's just getting your feet wet, and that's the whole point of 2024 and leading into 2025 is doing lots of matches, getting officials trained, getting athletes comfortable with it. Because that was another thing with the rules. Some of the athletes who've done it 2 or 3 times now, they sort of figured out how to use the rules to their advantage. And the guys that were doing it for the first time hadn't figured that out yet. So it's like, oh, yeah, they're starting, like guys were just going for the pile. Like the first time we did this, they did sort of the normal thing on bottom. And if you happen to be near a pylon, you'd try to knock it down. Now they're just shooting for the pylon, because they know they'll get 2 points.
Dart for it.
And so that's why we like maybe less time for the quick score bonus. And we've even talked about, not having a quick score bonus for the pylons. So we have a whole list here of, potential rule tweaks, that we're working on, that we continue to test and refine, which is what you have to do with rules. There's every time you change a rule, there's unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And I feel like the NCAA did not do that with some of their rule changes, but we're testing extensively and interviewing the athletes afterwards, and trying to get it right before we launch.
It's funny. You were talking about more ways for the bottom guy to score because Mike and I have actually been developing a wrestling based board game for several years, and we ran into a similar issue where the bottom position was, if you look at wrestling as a game with a set of rules, bottom position is the worst position to be in. So like, why would you ever want to be it? And it's funny, when you're a wrestler, everyone
Automatic.
when they
Go down.
down because it's
Auto bottom.
easy. Like it's easiest to
Yeah,
score
get
from there,
one.
but it's not the highest scoring producing position. So I kind of like the pylon with it being an added scoring option from bottom position, because you're right, it's the three position sport. How do you kind of equalize them so that you can score to, I mean, obviously top, you want to be on top because you can get the pin from top the easiest.
But it adds that layer of strategy.
Yeah, that's that layer
Yeah,
strategy.
and think about it. If you're not very good on your feet and you're on bottom, your reward for getting your escape is getting taken down.
Yeah.
So how about I'm going to go over there, stop me. It gives you,
Right.
maybe that should be my strategy. And we've seen that guys can't get out, but they win the round because the top guy can't control them. And it does require, I'll say that the top person might have to ride a little bit differently. Because you just throw in like a cross body ride or something, they're just going to crawl over the pile. That doesn't work. So if you can't figure out how to ride in a way that controls the person, then you just have to cut them, and then go on your feet. But
So go ahead, Mike.
I would say, a lot of talk about the pylons. Once one's knocked over, are they reset during the match, or are they, once the match is over, they're reset? How does what's the full rule breakdown on that?
So if it inadvertently gets knocked down in neutral, like somebody sprawls and knocks it down, they set it back up. Okay. So it can only be knocked down from top and bottom wrestling. But if it is knocked down in a round, it stays down for the rest of the round.
Okay.
It gets reset for the next round. Perfect. So they're always up for each round.
Yeah, the option's
once
always
it's down in a round. Yeah, I think the first time we ever did it, we set it right back up right away, and one guy got like 7 pylon points. And that's the balance. You don't want it to take over the match, but you don't want it to be so infrequent that there's no impact. So that's what we're still tweaking to get that exact right balance.
And what was the decision behind having it be win the most amount of periods? And it's 4 periods, right? Or 4 rounds? What was the decision making process behind it being 4 and then winning each one?
And kind of like what I said earlier, that you see so many matches, especially better guys, that they're trying to keep it close and win it at the end. And so it's boring. And nobody takes chances. And I mean, how many college matches, especially this year, that there's no. I remember Shane Sparks was always commenting on the Big Ten Network. There's no scoring in the first period for 3 minutes, and then you'll see the situations. Yeah, somebody gets they throw them to their back in the first period, and they get a 6-0 lead or something. Then they're able to coast and stall the rest of the match. So we really wanted each match to have consequences. And it's really no different than like tennis, or that's one of the things Banana Ball came up with some great rules. But one of them was you have to win the inning. Every inning is like a mini game. But tennis and I think there's some other sports, but that was really it. We wanted each we call them rounds to make it a little more familiar for MMA people. But we wanted each round to be its own mini thing that you got to try to win, and to encourage action.
And then how come 4? What was the number for 4?
Well, we wanted the rounds to be short, and either a minute or a minute and a half. And so, and the second and third rounds, somebody has to start on bottom. You start in referee's position. So first round is neutral. Second and third, somebody's got to be down, and they switch. And then the fourth round can be anything. So if those rounds, and some of the feedback from senior level guys was, Matt, wrestling, not sure I want to do it anymore. And we're like, well, it's only going to be a minute. If you can't get off the bottom and you're going to get punished, if Zane's on top of you, it's only going to be for a minute. Hopefully he doesn't take you down too. But so there's 2 minutes. And then if the first round was, that's the other thing, these long rounds, there's not a lot happening. We did studies of when points are scored, and there's more points scored at the end of a round usually than in the early parts of the round, which led to the quick score bonus as well, to give an incentive. But, so then you got a 3.5. If it was just 3 periods, you have a 3.5 minute match, basically. Even if you did a 2-minute first period, it's a 4-minute match, which didn't seem long enough. We wanted it to be shorter. We wanted it to be more of a sprint. So we didn't want a 7-minute match. We like the idea of 5, similar to what we were talking about at the beginning. Everything's getting faster and shorter and more social, short form content. And not that this is short form content, but we wanted the matches to go pretty quickly. There's only 7 weight classes, so a duel can be done in about an hour and 15 minutes. So even if we did do a double header, it's still 2.5 hours, which is less than most baseball games even now. And so then the other thing was, we're like, how can we, so in our research on fan psychology, and this is obvious, but fans come from behind victories.
Yeah.
Fans like close games and matches. And there's another problem with 3-point takedowns. Maybe a takedown is 3 times harder to get than an escape. Maybe it's not, but it makes the gap wider in these matches and they're less interesting to watch. And then of course you saw stalling resulting, if a guy has a 4-1 lead in the 3rd period in a college match now, they basically can stall their way out. No reason to shoot and take a chance on a go behind or a reattack or something. Mm-hmm. So we're like, how, so fans come from behind victories, fans like close matches that come down to the end, and fans like the Monday morning quarterback. And you don't have a lot of that in wrestling where you can question, a guy's decision. Like he might say, hey, why did he shoot when he was winning at the end there? Or, why did he choose down against, whoever, Spencer Lee? But there's not a ton of Monday morning quarterback. Like if you listen to talk radio, after a baseball game or after a football game, there's just all these callers calling in, questioning decisions made by the coach or the manager. Everybody knows more than the manager, right? And that's part of engaging fans in sports. In wrestling, there's not a lot of that. So how can we find ways so that people can second guess, and say that I would have done it differently? So this 4th round then comes and somebody's going to get a choice of what position they want to be in. And instead of just saying they choose top, bottom, or neutral, and that's what we did in 2023, whoever was losing, to that earlier point about come from behind victories, because we wanted to keep the matches closer. Whoever was losing got their choice, top, bottom, or neutral. Well, some of the coaches didn't like that after the fact. They said that's not fair. The guy that's losing gets this advantage. And if you're superior in a certain position, like on top or neutral or whatever, it's a big advantage. And you get to choose, and the other guy doesn't. So we're like, yeah, but we did that because we wanted come from behind victories, and we want overtime. We like overtime, and we have upper body battle on overtime, which is fan friendly usually.
We hate that freestyle
okay.
does not have overtime here.
Oh yeah,
that's one of the biggest frustrations. Everyone loves overtime.
Criteria is a joke.
Yeah.
Overtime, and it's got to be. We thought it has to be short, swift, decisive, exciting, and so let's put him in an upper body position and get it over quick. It turns out our square was a little too small, but I can talk about that later. But because we reduced the size of the boundaries from a big square down to a little square. But anyway, so the 4th round comes, and we're going to give an optional choice now to the guy who's losing, which means he can have the choice, but he's got to buy it. He's got to pay a price for it. He's got to give up a point if he wants it. Now, in folk style, that might sound extreme, like who would do that? But since we have more ways to score, it actually becomes more of a decision. So I've got this whole decision tree chart. Like if I'm better on top and he's better in neutral, or I stink on bottom and he's great on top, it all decides, do I pay a price to get this point? Because if he's really good on top and I'm lousy on bottom, I better pay the point and go neutral or maybe on top, right? So there's this opportunity for people to second guess. Why did he choose that? Why did he give up a point for that? Now, if the wrestler doesn't want to give up a point, they don't have to. They can decline, and then the other wrestler gets a choice, and they can decline too. And in our finals, that happened. Like the first match, they both declined, so they went to a coin flip to see who got the choice. Okay. But a lot of times the guys would choose, they would give up the point and choose bottom, because it seemed to be a little too easy to get points on bottom because they knew they could get a pylon or a quick score or a quick escape or something and make up that point right away. So again, that's why we're fiddling with some of those things. But that was the idea behind it. 3 rounds was too short. And the 4th round allowed us to introduce this little element of sort of strategy. And the other thing with having to win the round is Shane talks about this a lot in the broadcast, how it introduces strategy into each round. Like, do you cup the guy in the 2nd round now? Because, you need to get the takedown to win the round. Like, you don't really have that if it's just, cumulative points for the whole match.
So to circle back to overtime, could you explain exactly how overtime works? Because we watched the championship finals and like that Ortega-Strickenberger match, and I thought I understood what happened, but then when the way that and it got challenged, and then the way they said it ended up going, I was like, yeah, I don't think I followed. I don't understand exactly what happened there.
You know what happened? So the announcers were right. It's the same push out rules as it is any other time during the match.
Because Ortega stepped out first.
Except when our mat was delivered 2 days before the event, the red square. So what I was saying earlier is, it kind of becomes more like sumo. It's the red square in the middle was the boundary. And when we rolled out the mat and put it together for the first time, we're like, I'm not sure this square is big enough. Like, there's not a lot of room here, especially for bigger guys. So we're like, let's change it just for overtime. And you got to get both feet out. If you get both feet out, it's a push out.
Okay.
But the announcers were never told that. So that's why, like, I know McMullen's like, Ortega stepped out there. Why isn't that a push out? And the reason is we changed it on him without telling him. So it did cause some confusion, which we
I was like,
about.
I mean, I don't understand how he ended up winning despite stepping out, but okay.
I know.
All right, that makes a little bit more sense.
Just, I love the rules. I love the idea for quick scoring. It's a lot of stuff that reminds me of what I do with like some of my younger guys at youth, where there might be a mismatch and it's like, oh, going to the 3rd period, you're up 4-2. It goes, well, now it's tied 3-3, and you have to figure it out. So I love that you're finding ways to challenge the athletes and say, you can't coast on that lead. And I love the gamble for, what are you going to give up to hopefully get something back? And I appreciate the explanation about overtime, because Mike and I were watching that Strickenberger Ortega match, and we're like, I don't understand. And I like the idea of both feet out. I think too many guys try to do a bull rush and they'll he quick stepped out.
Because it's easy to get one guy to step one foot out, but
I
both
like
that definitely is a lot more controlled type thing to occur.
I was a little the winning the round brought me back to old freestyle, where I was like, I didn't like that, or I wasn't a fan of the old freestyle rules with that, but I could see here why it would be so useful.
It is that we hear that a lot about the old freestyle rules, and it is different because there's 4 rounds. And the rounds are shorter, and there's more ways to score, and stalling is called so much quicker. So
exactly.
And that's it. All the rules so holistically have to fit together. And that's why you change one thing and does it changes something else, and so that's why, I already mentioned a lot of testing is necessary.
How does that caution in 1 point work in that Hart Zacone match? I was like, I mean, the announcers sounded just as confused, but because like they gave a caution in one, then they took it away, then they gave the other guy like a caution in one, and I was just like, wow, you lost me now.
So there's a lot of modifications to the rules, like little tweaks. And one of them was that you get 1 caution. And we want faster pace. We want action. We want to keep fans engaged. Why are you giving 2 cautions? You get 1 caution, and then it's a point. So the refs originally called it, the refs knew that. They had studied the rule book, and they got that right. But then somebody at the score table said, hey, you get 2 cautions. Like they were just, thinking it was normal college wrestling. You got 2 cautions, and they came over and huddled, and then I think they took it away. And then at the end of the period, they found out that they did it right the first time, and they brought it back. So all this stuff we call fall under the category of growing pains and making
Right.
sure that everybody's trained and it's not the league yet. And you hate when new people are watching for them to be confused and like, what the heck's going on here? But so there wasn't that much of that. I mean, Shane and Mike, the broadcasters, I thought for
Incredible.
watching these for their first
Yeah.
time, I thought did an incredible job. And like I said,
Yeah,
the one
for sure.
time where they kind of had it wrong was it was our fault because we forgot to tell them something.
Yeah, I mean, every time they were saying something, like I was like agreeing with them, like I feel like I understand exactly what they understand, yet I still don't understand it. But that you cleared that up, so
Oh, you know what else I love that you guys do is you keep the review time short.
oh, I loved that.
No, that was awesome. I feel like we're seeing it more and more
The
where,
challenge review.
a challenge takes 12, 15 minutes. I mean, I remember Dayton Fix just this last year at
Oh, yeah.
NCAA's. And it's like, wow, man, the match is 35, 40 minutes. And it's,
Yeah,
it takes conditioning out of it completely. And I
yeah.
love the
completely
way you
changes
guys
the-
do that. You keep the action going and it helps keeps the fan engaged, I feel.
Well, I appreciate the comment, but there was one instance where that did not happen. And that was under the growing pains.
I was about to say growing
Growing
pains,
Yeah.
But apparently, that was our first TV production ever. Like I've never been involved in anything like that. So overall we're pretty pleased, but a lot of lessons learned. And one of them was that, and I don't know how they did it. The first match had 2 challenge bricks thrown around that overtime. I think at the end of regulation and maybe at overtime, and they reviewed it pretty quickly. But then we got to a match later, and somehow the truck didn't know that we wanted replays, and everybody was standing around waiting. And we even made the announcement. We do, because our policy is the refs have 60 seconds to review a call, and they got to get over there and have it pulled up. But then we put them on a clock, and everybody in the crowd can see the clock, and everybody on TV should be able to see the clock. And for the crowd, any way we can engage fans and make it interactive, we're doing it. So we're going to encourage them once it gets to 10, to start counting down. The whole crowd's counting down so that the refs know you got to decide quick. If they can't decide in 60 seconds, it's not indisputable. That's what drives me crazy about, football games and NCAAs. They say it has to be indisputable, but how is it? It's going on for 5 minutes here.
Yeah.
So our ideal, what Mike, what you said is what we hope to have happen every time. And we might even do less challenge it. Like that first match had 2 challenge bricks thrown, and we're like, we're slowing
no one
down
wants
already.
to watch this. Yeah,
it's slogging it.
I mean, we're leaning towards now you get 1 per dual meet, and
Ooh.
use it wisely.
Right.
It needs to be a game changer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you go with what the ref said. And there's 2 refs, so hopefully they get it right.
Yeah. I think one of the big ways to kind of help promote and engage new people to Claw and in a new sports league is the new teams. So we have 6 teams here. We have the Enforcers, the Matt Canes, the Hammers, Cradle City Cicadas,
What a
the
badass
Chaos
name.
All right, Cradle City Cicadas, the Chaos, and the Leopards. So I mean, this must have been so much fun coming up with these team names and logos.
I love the logo of the Hammers.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Hammers. And I mean, and we
Makes it a
commented
journeyman.
just kind of joking. I feel like the Cactus guy would fit in really well right here.
man.
I don't know, like down the road, maybe an expansion franchise, the Cactus. Just putting that
I have
out
to
there.
agree.
But
It would be very cool.
yeah. So were these your
Would the
idea?
mascot have? The things sticking out? The poke people?
The
spike
pricklers?
people?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Pricklers. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
Were these your idea, like coming up with these team names and designs? How did these come about?
So we brainstormed on a lot of potential names, and then the very first event we did in 2023, we surveyed there was probably 200 or 300 people there, so we surveyed everybody on the names to see what they like. I think we might have done a online poll, and then we just kept adding to it, and it's fun. Part of it is very fun, but it's also exhausting and sort of stressful because we went through hundreds and hundreds of names and evaluated them on different criteria. Uh, and we had a whole sort of template that we used to rate the names. And is a lot of work. And even then we couldn't agree on all of these. But it's fun. It was fun brainstorming on the mascots and working to get the logos the way we liked. I mean, was a ton of work. Uh, but I'm really looking forward. I mean, we had some really funny names too. Like one of my favorite was the ringworms. That didn't make it.
Worms. Oh my god, I love that.
That didn't make the cut. Oh,
I
no.
love that.
That would have been a great one, man.
Oh man.
The uniform would be, just red circles all over it.
Yeah. Polka dots.
Yeah. So the teams we think are really important because, athletes come and go, but people who become fan of a team, can stay it for many, many, many years. Now, nobody knows anything about these teams yet, so it's a challenge to build brand loyalty with the teams. But they might like a team because they like the mascot. They might like a team because they like the logo or colors. They might like a team because they like a wrestler on the team or the come from behind victory of a team. Even at our event last month, the people were into the teams. And I got to say, the Enforcer's mascot, the horse, was like super popular. Like the kids loved him. Everybody wanted their picture with them. And I think they're Enforcer fans now. So yeah, it's fun, but we've got to build team and, brand loyalty, with the teams, and that will take some time too. And then it will be fun to add new teams into the mix. One thing I wanted to mention too was, and I think this is where wrestling, when we look at the marketplace, MMA has exploded. It's hugely popular, all around the world. And, wrestling's still this little niche, in the scheme of, media, this tiny little niche sport. But we have several compelling advantages, with this league, we think, that will help us succeed in the marketplace. And one is the teams. You don't really have teams, in UFC or MMA. And two, we also think there's a lot of people who just like the sort of the violence of MMA is just too much, for them. And I talk to parents all the time who have kids, and they're like, we're not going to watch UFC. And whether it's the physical violence or sort of the whole culture of it, there's a lot of people that just, don't want to expose their kids to that. But people love combat sports, and wrestling is a combat sport. So we're sort of a more, family-friendly combat sport, for lack of a better word. And it doesn't take away from the fact, that anybody, even if you like MMA, if we can illustrate that wrestling's tough and physical and action-packed, we think we can get MMA people to watch as well. There's not punching and kicking, but there's other things that should engage fans. And then the third thing is, wrestling's the only combat sport in schools. A huge advantage for us. That we need to exploit and take advantage of that.
So Claw Wrestling, WrestleClaw.com. Tom, what's the easiest way? Are you guys on social media? How do people access you? You have a YouTube channel. How can we get this out to the masses, spread the word? How can people share this with their friends, family, everyone?
Yeah, so following on social media is a great way because we post pretty much every day. And the website has all the general information on the team and the rules and things like that. But all the social media platforms are @claw_wrestling, @claw_wrestling. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X. And then we're getting ready to launch a TikTok account. We just haven't done that yet. So it'd be great if people wanted to follow us and keep abreast of the developments and everything. We try to post interesting comment. Right now, we're going through the statistics. We've come up with a whole bunch of new statistics to measure performance. Copying off of baseball. If you watch a baseball game, the statistics that they have are just, unlimited. This guy's hitting 327 on Saturday afternoons, with less than 10,000 people in the crowd, whatever.
Yeah.
They've got a statistic for everything. Sometimes it's really interesting, and sometimes it's like, seriously. But guess what? You were just engaged in between pitches when you would have been bored. You're reading a statistic and deciding if you think it's interesting or not. So wrestling needs more statistics than just, record and pins and, maybe major decisions. So we're going through that, for example, now on social media, some of the ones that we've come up with, and ranking the guys that were just in the tournament that we did, to kind of illustrate how that works. So, but yes, thank you for letting me give that address. But yeah, at @claw_wrestling are all the social media sites.
Mike and Mike, you guys have any lasting
I-
comments here for Tom?
I have one question just on the future of Claw. So way at the beginning we talked about duels and how some people don't really get as hyped for the duels anymore. Is there ever a future where we could see Claw individual tournaments where you're competing for the Claw individual national championship, where there's multiple guys in weights and they have to duke it out in a tournament setting that we've come so accustomed to seeing at the Big Tens, the NCAAs, the Worlds, and the Olympic stages? Is there a thought about that, or is it kind of too early to project?
No, that's a great question. And one of the things we learned last month is, man, a lot of college guys want to do this and enjoy doing it. And if they can make some money doing it and they can compete in a time where, there's not a lot going on and, to break up the grind, they're really into it. I mean, the guys from Campbell and West Virginia and George Mason and most of the Missouri guys have graduated already. But those schools that I just mentioned, they were all undergrad guys. And so we're talking about, so what we've talked about so far in this conversation is sort of a senior levels men's professional league, right? But we want to have a sort of a college league, and we want to have a women's league, and we want to have youth programs as well. And so I think the model for that is what we've talked about for youth and for boys and girls. And then college is having regional tournaments around the country. I don't know if like Mawa is big in our area here. I don't know if you know the Mawa tournament.
Yeah,
They
the
have
Mawas,
districts.
Mawas is big over here.
Yeah, so
'Cause it
districts
comes
and
up
regionals
close.
and a national
Yep.
tournament.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mawa
So we're
National
talking about,
Champ-
like, for colleges, it would be cool to have, maybe to start off a Southeast regional, a Northeast regional, Midwest, whatever. It's an open tournament. Anybody can enter. And then if you win it, you go to the either national tournament, or you are going to be the representative for your region in a sort of national duel.
Okay.
So
So, like,
the representative on the Southeast regional team for a dual tournament. But it could be an individual tournament the whole way as well. I think for kids, it would be individual the whole way probably. And then we definitely want to do, each of these groups is different, timing and even rules. So we definitely wanted to do something for women as well. And especially the senior level women, it's been a long time since they've wrestled folk style, so the rules have to be tweaked at all for that.
Yeah, get
But,
Tamir to be a double pro wrestler. GTV Claw and WWE.
WWE.
Yes.
I
So that's the plan. I think between that and then summer camps featuring Claw wrestlers, we have a really solid. Look, I started off at the beginning saying, we're business people who want to create a media and entertainment company, and we're using wrestling as the vehicle to do that. As we're wrestling people too, but that's how we view ourselves on this, as opposed to we're wrestling people and we're going to try to convince the world that wrestling's the greatest sport as is, because we're kind of in the bubble of wrestling. And, that's really been our biggest challenge is wrestling people are just resistant to change and skeptical. And when we talk to sports media people who aren't involved with wrestling, they're like totally excited about the potential. But the wrestling people are like, it's been tried before. Pylons, and so but I think we have a really solid business plan, and part of that business plan is these tournaments for youth, for women, for college guys. Really, the sky's the limit. It's just going to take everything. Rome isn't built in one day, but we're hoping in 2025 to have hopefully a college season. And boy, it'd be really cool if it was the college. Originally we were thinking like college duels, but I think we're leaning towards what you just mentioned, Mike. It's just an open tournament for college guys, and then if they win, they go on to nationals.
Yeah, I mean, I know so many of my high schoolers that graduate and, they maybe they don't get the college scholarship they were hoping for wrestling. And it's a little discouraging. And they say, I don't want to wrestle for, any other school. And they kind of float for a bit. I'll come coach, I'll help out the high school, help out the youth, but they just want to compete still. And I think that, it's a huge market. I know that, Mike and Jack have probably coached some guys as well that, college didn't exactly pan out for them the way they expected, but they just love the sport and they just want the opportunity to compete. And I think that's a huge market for you guys. So it sounds like a great plan and a great strategy that you guys are already targeting it.
And a lot of them are good wrestlers.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And even if they're not, sometimes some guys that aren't as good, it's kind of sloppy. That's more exciting for fans.
Yeah, it's just a lot of rolling.
Guys are so good, their defense is so good, and it's hard to score. It's sometimes it's fun to watch some guys that don't know what they're doing as much. But there's a lot of good wrestlers out there, though. Yeah, that aren't getting the chance. Because the opportunities once you're out of college are few and far between.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can absolutely tell the amount of effort, thought, love that has gone into the Claw so far. We are super excited about the potential of it, and we're excited to keep on following, and hopefully we can see a next in-person match or even just online or whatnot. But we appreciate the time here tonight, Tom, and showcasing us a little bit about Claw. Commenters, please follow Claw. This is super exciting for the sport of wrestling. The whole goal of this channel is to grow the sport of wrestling. So Tom and his team and Claw, they are doing nothing but promoting wrestling, and it's exciting time to get into wrestling, especially with women's wrestling becoming so popular and booming these days, and just seeing something new, a variety is super exciting. So we appreciate all the time here tonight, Tom, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment down below your thoughts about Claw Wrestling, and if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. We are Cactus Wrestling, and we'll see you next time on our next video.